Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Doug Brodman. I lead our advertising sales business for Netflix at the U.S. In the U.S. and Canada. I'm excited to be here today with Kamal and with Michael. Kamal is the Vice President, Brand and Consumer Marketing at Align Technologies, and Michael is the Chief Executive Officer at Starcom. I'd love quickly, just a quick moment from both of you on a little bit about your roles and what you're up to, and then we'll get into it.
So, hi everyone. My name is Kamal, as you mentioned. I am the VP of Marketing for the Invisalign brand and head up all consumer marketing for Invisalign as well.
And I run Starcom. It's pretty straightforward, which is a pretty busy job. Get to spend a lot of time with wonderful clients like Kamal, but everything from managing the P&L to new business to HR. I do a little bit of everything.
Fantastic. So I think when we talked last week, we were going to spend some time today talking about the relationship that brands have with their agency partners and vice versa. So I think to get us started, you both last week when we spoke were pretty excited about the evolution of how your brands started working together and that relationship and how it's evolved and what makes it so unique. So maybe Kamal, from your side, you can talk a little bit about the relationship with Starcom and how that's been so far as a partner.
Sure. So first and foremost, context. We started our relationship with Starcom in January of 2020. So right before the pandemic. And so a big portion of our relationship has been built remotely, right? When you think about where we are today, just a few years later, post-pandemic, we're building on a foundation that was built remotely. Now, what that really did is it forced the teams to come together. I'm a big believer that the more your agency partners understand about your business, the stronger the outcome is. And so Starcom, as a part of the Publicis group, immersed themselves in our business remotely and has really helped us drive growth over the last few years. But I think more than that, one of the key shifts that we're actually seeing as a result of that integration is a shift where the media agencies, I think, are sitting at the center of culture, of technology, and data. And what that has really meant for us has been elevating the role of the Starcom team to be more of a strategic partner for us, and I'd say my go-to strategic partner as we think about how we're going to unlock growth, how we integrate the Invisalign brand into culture so that we unseat the tribalism that exists with races.
So I would add a couple of things. I wasn't actually at Starcom when we first started working with Invisalign, so to me the whole thing has been a bit of an evolution. I would say, much to what Kamal was just saying, the makeup of our team looks very different now, and having to overcome what you said to start because of COVID was momentous in and of its own right. But the makeup of our team looks very different now than it did when we first started working with you, which is the natural course of any relationship. When we first start working with a client and what happens over time tends to look very different. We're much more data-driven now than we were, focused on insight, trying to help Kamal and the team understand Gen Z, which is not easy on any given day. And I would say she has pushed us appropriately, and I think we've pushed back appropriately, which is why she's very kind to say that we're her go-to strategic partner, which is Sarah sitting in the back of the room who runs the business, which kudos to her. We think about their business, not about the media component of their business. I think that's what's made this a very good relationship and one that continues to be progressive.
Something that you just said, Kamal, perked my ears up, which is relying on your agency partners to sit at the center of culture and technology and help that inform decisions that are strategic for your business. As a platform that leans heavily into culture
and creates
it, what can partners like us do, or partners across the ecosystem do, to help your relationship flourish and be more successful?
So I think there's a couple of things, and I think Michael touched on Gen Z, right? And I think when you think about Gen Z, there's two pieces that I always talk about, and that is Gen Z is not a monolith, right? It's the earliest or the youngest part of Gen Z is sitting at 16 years old right now. The oldest part of Gen Z, right, is probably sitting at like 25, 26. Those are two really different consumers. And so as I think about the data piece, helping us understand that, I think is just an elementary and rudimentary great piece of it. I think the other thing is you talk about what can you guys do with Starcom to bring brands like us opportunities. I think it's really thinking about how do we create culture together, right? So we shift from talking at people to actually being a part of conversations with people, and the word people I think is really important and distinct from consumers. Because a lot of time I think we all get in the industry really caught up with audiences and consumers and these industry terms, and we forget the people piece of it to truly understand what is that 16-year-old living versus what is that 25-year-old living that then brings itself, those insights bring itself into unlocking amazing creative, amazing media partnerships, and I think we need more of them.
I would add, Doug, that helping us help them. So there's two types of culture. I was actually having this with a conversation with a different client. There's culture with a big C, like big, momentous cultural shifts, and then there's like smaller C's, like the little things that happen. But I was struck by the woman from Axon, whose name Christine, I think. That is one set of data that we use, and we have Epstein, and we leverage it, pretty heavily on almost all of our clients. But what Epsilon isn't necessarily going to give us are like the cultural insights. And we find ourselves, and there's no right answer to this, find ourselves chasing culture rather than being there at the beginning of it. I think companies like Netflix, like Kim, who's our CSO sitting in the audience, like the things that we're working on, and like what are the data sets? Where's the information we're going to get? So we're at least there when the culture is happening. Like I get asked this question by one of our maybe famous CMOs, who's like, I understand BTS is a culture shift, but what created it? And God knows I don't have the answer to that. But like helping us, like you sit on that, you see it early. So working with a Netflix to help us get access to that so we can help Invisalign earlier in that sort of shift is critically important. Like that's the conversation, like there's trading conversations, they happen. We leave PMX to do that. It's what are the insights that you're going to bring to help us continue to be strategic partners? And by the way, make you a strategic partner for them as well. That's the other, versus a trading partner or a content partner.
And I'll build one other thing. Right? I think language is really important when opportunities come to us. And I think that there's a shift that's required from language from here's an advertising buy or a media placement to here's a business opportunity for you to unlock revenue, right? It might be early in terms of setting culture, so whoever is the next BTS, as an example. And then contextualizing that for us versus only positioning it as an advertising buy. I think that's
so if you haven't heard about the Orange campaign that Publicis did for the French women's national team, I encourage all of you to look up that case study because it's fabulous. I won't give it away, but we've been rolling that out and showing it to some of our clients, and at the end, it's like when an ad isn't an ad. So I won't bury the lead. I want you all to watch it, but that's another thing, like because it became this huge thing that had impact. It was being used in schools to actually change gender norms, et cetera. So helping us to do those things are pretty important.
And that's incredible because those are things, I mean, I've not heard about that. I'm definitely going to look it up and check it out. I mean, those are things that are deeply rooted in insights and deeply meaningful to communities. And you both run, obviously, global businesses that are very large in scale. That's something to me that jumps out as being very locally relevant. So how do you push the limits on creativity on one another while ensuring that you're delivering meaningful experiences locally to consumers?
So, I mean, a couple of things. We talked about women's sports quite a bit, right? I'll just use that as an illustrative example of finding the commonality, right? Building a brand globally requires understanding how do you be consistent and true to who you are as a brand, but also be relevant in the markets that you operate in. And for us, where creativity and media has really come together has been with an investment in women's sports and understanding how we do that in the right way in each market, right? So we've got investments across the relevant sport that is local in a market like Brazil, where we have Rebecca Andrade competing in a couple of weeks here in Paris, to a high school athlete with some of the investments that we have with the overtime crew that the Starcom team brought to us. So it pushed us to really understand what does creative need to look like in order to be relevant in the specific market that we're operating in while still maintaining consistency throughout.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter whether it's creativity, media, whatever it is, if you try to command and control from the center, right, you're going to fail. Because by the way, I was just say this country, but even in the US, like we were talking about this yesterday, somebody who lives on the West Coast and the East Coast is very different than somebody who lives potentially in the South and the Midwest. So even then, right, like I was just having a conversation this morning about what does high net worth look like? Like, actually, is it the same in the 4 geographies view of the US? And it's a similar thing. So you can put global strategic frameworks in, but it has to be influenced by local insight, one, to get to what a big brand strategy or creative strategy might be, and then its articulation has to be local because, by the way, this is not a newsflash. We don't all look the same, right, and we don't all act the same, and so that's how you have to do that.
So let's talk about how you manage against results. Michael, you have to run an agency, and you need to deliver results to the bottom line for your agency. Kamal, you need to deliver results for your brands in particular. You both have goals. They are mutually exclusive, yet highly dependent upon one another. Yep. How do you balance that within your relationship?
I mean, we listen, right? I mean, and you're right, we do have financial goals, but I think Kamal and the team understanding, I mean, we don't get into the specifics, but recognize that we're running a business, right? And knowing that they have a business makes it a bit easier to do those things. I also know, at the moment, the macroeconomic climate is not great, right? So that could challenge a brand like Invisalign, and we have to be sensitive to that, knowing that if we're a partner now, they will be a partner later. It's pretty much that simple. Not all clients work that way, right? Some are very cost driven. I would argue a lot of those clients, if you look at their business results, are commensurate with the fact that they're very cost driven. But most of our clients understand that we also are running a business, and as long as we are sympathetic to what they're doing, it's not generally a problem.
Yeah.
Well, and I would just add, I think what makes it easier is that we have one common goal, right? That I'm measured on, that Michael and his team are measured on, and that's growing revenue for Invisalign. Yep. Right? So everything that we do is in service of unlocking that revenue growth. And I think that really helps makes our investment choices easier. It helps contextualize opportunities on the team, all the way from like senior leadership down to the most junior person on the team, which you don't always get in organizations. So I think it's in some ways easy.
It's actually very topical because we have learned of late that in many cases our teams don't understand the business of our business or the business of their business. Yeah. And so some of my executive team are working on business of the business training that we're going to roll out to the teams. It actually was a conversation that started with Katie Ford from Novartis because we had a couple of issues, and she was like, the impact on our business from those issues, Michael. And I was like, we should probably take this and explain it to the team so that they understand and take maybe a little bit more responsibility for what they're doing, right?
So I think when we look at results and how we value them or evaluate them, I think sometimes there's a misconception that creativity can come at the expense of things like efficiency, right? And I don't particularly believe that. But as a marketer, when you are trying to drive bottom line results, and some of that is driven by efficiency, how do you balance the need to be efficient in what you're doing with the effectiveness you're trying to drive and the results you're partnering with Starcom on?
I always say choose effectiveness over efficiency every day of the week. If you flip that on its head and choose efficiency over effectiveness, we can all say bye-bye to that growth objective that we're ultimately trying to achieve. So for us, it's as simple as that. Clearly, we all have budgets and we have to live within those budgets, but we're not going to drive to the most efficient media choice because the reality is it's probably the most efficient for a reason. Our adult business, we're trying to inspire people to open their wallets and choose to get a better smile. And we want them to do it with Invisalign, of course, right? But in order to do that, we're not going to drive that inspirational $5,000 investment with a super efficient ad that's talking at people. So effectiveness over efficiency every day.
Even Byron Sharp said you can chase efficiency off a cliff, right? Or ROI off a cliff. So because your next best customer is the one you haven't converted yet. And if you try to do that just through efficient means, which is not to suggest you shouldn't try to be as efficient as you can to be, those are very different things, you will not bring in your next best customer. And we are having, like, I can't, it's almost like it's become a cultural shift. To go back to the beginning, the number of conversations that I personally have with clients around chasing ROI off a cliff is a terrible thing. To your point about creativity, I think the issue has been, because I'm fortunate to sit across some of our accounts, across all of the Publicis engagement, is the model just didn't change. Like, they were going off, still doing expensive shoots where clients' business was under pressure. And we get asked, like, I would get asked this question, like, why is my production, and I'm not trying to crap on production, like, why is my non-working 30% of my working? So, I in a way, like, every action has its opposite reaction. And I think to some extent, the opposite reaction in certain places has been, you just haven't rethought your model. It's going back to the partnership point that Kamal made in the beginning. Like, we are constantly trying to think about doing those things differently. Your AI conversation earlier, like, that, when controlled, will be a bonus to help create some efficiency without losing the effectiveness of creativity, right, and the creative output, I think.
One other piece to that, right, for brands on the construction and the makeup of teams. So we brought all data science in-house a few years ago. My chief data science officer sits in the finance organization but isn't part of my team. And he's an integral part of my team and the conversations with the Starcom team. And the reason why we do that is twofold. One, so he understands the art and science of what we're doing. Because you can chase, right? The data would tell you your most efficient ROI is media channel X, your least efficient is Y. But by being a part of our brand team, effectively, even though he sits in finance, what he's able to really appreciate is the art and science of what we're trying to do. Now, what that does is it translates into a very different conversation with our CFO. So when he's in conversations I'm not in, he's able to truly understand what it is that we're trying to do and why we shouldn't chase ROI off of it.
It landed on, I mean, Kim's work, it landed us to balance what we call exposure, which is reach, with experience, which are more creative executions in media, which seems to be resonating and working. So, if you chase efficiency off a cliff, that's where your business is going to
It's
wind
almost like a reverse engineered data strategy where you're arming Starcom to be a better partner for you with giving them the insight into the business that they need.
By the way, the most efficient thing for me to do is staff all of my teams with assistant planners.
Right.
That wouldn't go over very well. Like, Starcom would not be in business for very long if I did that.
Yeah. So as you mentioned something in terms of the cultural shifts that tend to inform how you consult clients, what are some of the things that are happening now that are shifting the way in which your teams are partnering with brands, including Invisalign, that you've noticed, Michael, across the market that's kind of changing the way that agencies maybe work or partner?
So I think there's a couple. The first is AI. I mean, we're doing a whole thing about taking the BS out of AI, but there is no doubt if done correctly, it's going to be super impactful for our clients' businesses. So we're getting a lot of questions about that. Fortunately for us, because we embedded Epsilon pretty early on into our business, we're having easier conversations with our clients about how to leverage that, both from an activation perspective, but an insight perspective. And now the thing, like the conversations we're having are, how do we leverage that from a creative perspective, right? Because if we know that somebody wants to buy Invisalign for 30% less, but you're sending them a message where it's 30% more, something is going to be wrong. Or we use this McDonald's case study where they knew certain things about their customers, and we knew a whole lot more. In the example we use, which has become legend in the agency, is, we were serving Big Mac ads to a woman who didn't eat red meat, which is bad. So that's I think the second one, the big rocks. And then the third is it was the panel was talking about before, like, I don't think that television's ever going to go away, right? People my son's 18. He does not watch live television other than sports anymore, but he watches a lot of stuff on that screen. And so the dynamics of the marketplace, which the guy from EDO was talking about, is a lot of what we're getting asked about, as well as like what do we do with content? Like, where do we find the right content? And we get a lot of questions about Gen Z too. Those are like the 4 current ones. Yeah.
Got it. So, I mean, one thing you just mentioned in terms of, TV's not going away. Sports consumption happens to be up typically year on year consistently. Invisalign is a partner of the NFL. P.S. Watch the NFL on Netflix on Christmas Day. Just a plug for everybody.
They have packages available.
The package is available. Whatever you need, find me after. But how has that relationship gone for you? I mean, it's a big. We know the NFL has 37 different official partners. Invisalign's being one of them. It's a big relationship and a big step for a brand to jump in with the NFL. How's that gone? And how is Publicis as a sports center of excellence, as a consultancy worked? Have you worked with them in terms of how that relationship evolves?
Yeah, I mean, I think, with any partnership, one of the things we really look at, and the NFL included, is how do we make it a deep partnership that has some level of authenticity versus just slap my logo here. And so there's 2 pieces to how that came to life with the NFL. The first is every player on each of the 32 teams can get Invisalign at no cost to the player. So we have more than 450 NFL players across all 32 teams who use Invisalign, right? Where that becomes super powerful is actually them experiencing the product firsthand, the stories that they're telling their friends, the stories that go on in the locker room, and then also, really for us, we're then able to choose a few players and elevate them to be brand ambassadors and work with them in communities that we function in, so that we're giving back to communities, but then also really helping inspire that next generation. That's one piece of it. The second piece of our partnership is really the NFL's health and safety team uses our 3D scanner to scan all players for their mouth guards. So that's a part of our business. Our business is both B2B as well as B2C. On the B2B side, that's huge, right? So it's a really deep partnership in that way. And then if you think about the second part of your question in terms of what role the Starcom team has helped us in that partnership is Starcom's at the center of it. When we think about all of the conversations with the NFL, the media buying that goes along with that, we need a partner that helps us be smart about that partnership and that buy. So it's been going pretty well. But I'd say even beyond the NFL, our partnerships also extend into women's sports. And we are very much a brand who's jumped in early on the women's sports side with many of the athletes and talking about the business of women's sports, not just from the athlete's side, but also throughout the careers of all of the athletes. So what does women's sports look like when you're a post-athlete career and you're actually starting a team? Someone like Allie Wagner, as an example, who's in the next era of her career, all the way down to high school players with the overtime crew.
Yeah.
So sports for us is a pretty deep partnership built on the success that we've had with the NFL.
It does seem like much of it comes back to telling those locally relevant stories and those insights that drive connection with potential consumers, and obviously in making it locally relevant, which is, I mean, it's amazing. Even the mouth guard insight is news, and like being able to tell that story and the why behind the NFL, I think is very interesting. I mean, for us on the women's sports side, very much the same, where we're trying to tell the story behind the athletes and where they've come from. We're about to release a documentary on Simone Biles on the eve of her hopeful comeback in the Paris Olympics.
She's off to a pretty good start.
Yeah. So, but those things are really critical, and I think us and our Starcom partners, should talk more about how we get to shine a bigger light on that.
100%.
Yeah. And they need help.
Yep.
A lot of those women's sports leagues that you just don't hear about, like we've been talking to the National Women's Hockey League, and like they don't have more than one uniform. Like so they need brands to get involved to help them, and they're actually selling out like 20,000 seat stadiums. So, but they really need help. So.
There's definitely more that I think that can be done there for sure. All right, so let's have one more question to kind of close this out. We're getting a little closer on time. But in terms of your partnership and where it's going, 2-part question. One is, what would you like to see more from one another? Where would you like Michael to push you, and vice versa? Well, to you to push Michael.
I'm not sure I can actually push her more.
And then lastly, I mean, what are you hoping to get out of this week to bring back to your teams? This week is all about creativity. We're focused a lot on data, obviously, and things like that. But this week is about creativity. What are you looking to bring back to your teams to try and help steer the strategy going forward this year?
So, okay, where would we push more on the Starcom side? I'd say I push more to elevate the intersection of creative and media, and to do it effectively. One of the things that I think we've done really well with some of the partnerships that we've had, whether it's with the Overtime partnership or it's with Who What Where on the adult side of our business, is it's not just a media partnership, it's actually a partnership that includes media distribution, it includes influencers and social, and it includes production. And what I think is of high value in that is not only have we found really great partners to team up with who understand our business, but the speed at which we can move and moving at the speed of culture, these partnerships have really enabled us to do that. And I think there's more of that is needed. And then I think the second part is what we touched on earlier, right? More of what we need is that business acumen. I really am a big believer that the more the business, the media partners, the agency partners understand our business, the better our results will be. And that's not Michael understanding our business or the senior leadership team. It's actually the people who have hands on keyboards who are doing the work every single day. They need to feel our brand, they need to understand our brand, but they need to understand the business of how we run it.
Yeah. My push is to Kamal. We have a pretty open and transparent relationship, and you haven't picked up on that. Is when she's making some of those pushes, making sure she understands what some of the practical realities of that are and aren't. And by the way, on the flip side of that, being pretty honest when she's being right. So I do think there are places where across the group we should be moving faster, and she and I have pretty open conversations about that. So, there's probably not much I would push her on. The second part of your question, but just because I'm constantly pushing, I know. No, I know, but like, there's not, oh, you should pay us more. Okay. That's not true. The second part of that, so we did an inspiration session internally at Publicis on Sunday, and it was a review of work that was submitted for awards, and I was literally blown away. Like, I couldn't believe how much great work we produced. So for me, the takeaway, and work, by the way, that's creating impact, not just like commercials. Like, one of our favorites was about a Heineken campaign about pubs closing in Ireland, and then coming up with the idea to turn those pubs into museums, because museums get funded by the Irish government. You can't shut them down, and like, they're saving the pub culture of Ireland. Like, I would have never known that. So going back to the States, like, we're going to set up some sessions to go through some of the work, like Orange and a few of the others, so that our teams can see what we're talking about, which is how does media help create those experiences, this creative experience. Like, to me, that would be the takeaway. And the fact that Rick Zahn came to see me on this panel. I'll take that back to you.
See Rick.
I'll build on that in terms of what I'm going to take back to our team. When I think about our brand, Invisalign brand, I've been with the brand for 11 years. So not OG, but second round OG. And what keeps me at Invisalign is the amazing impact that we have on people's lives, right? For them to see who they are in a light that's different than what they thought before. And I think what I will take back to the team is reminding people of that, so that we can really elevate the brand story in a way that I think needs to be told, so that we can continue to be the iconic brand that we are.
That's great. And I think the headline for me here is just the partnerships within this business, while rooted in media, can really have an impact on people's lives. And being able to have an open relationship with your partners on the business side really does fuel that creativity and result in really great work. I mean, I learned a lot about your business in even meeting last week and today, so I'm appreciative. And I want to thank both of you for joining.
Thanks a lot.